"Is that a joke, old man?" The voice cut through the humid morning air, sharp and condescending, belonging to a young Delta operator whose eyes gleamed with amusement at the sight of a solitary figure approaching the training compound. Eli Bennett, 84, moved slowly across the concrete tarmac, his weathered hands gripping the handle of a worn combat knife, the leather-wrapped hilt polished smooth by decades of use. The sunlight reflected off the blade, dull yet deliberate, as if carrying a story in every inch. Team Falcon, a half-dozen men barely half his age, laughed, the sound bouncing off the gray hangars, their voices masking the subtle tension that had begun to coil in the air. They stepped forward, circling him with casual arrogance, boot heels scraping against the pavement, eyes fixed on the knife with an unsettling mixture of curiosity and mockery. Eli's gaze did not waver. His pale blue eyes, calm and calculating, scanned each operator in turn, noting the slight twitch of a jaw here, the overconfident smirk there, the subtle hesitation that betrayed the uncertainty beneath their bravado. "You think that relic can do anything?" one of them jeered, flicking a finger against the leather hilt. Eli's hand tightened slightly, but no words escaped him. Instead, he drew a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the heat of the sun on his back, the metallic tang of the air, the faint hum of activity from the nearby training vehicles. The memory began to stir, triggered by the touch, by the light brushing across a small, faint blood mark near the base of the knife. Suddenly, the sounds of the compound faded, replaced by the humid, heavy air of a jungle half a world away, the smell of wet earth and cordite thick and choking. Eli's hands were young again, steady and precise, holding the same knife as he had 25 years ago, passing it to a wounded comrade whose eyes met his with silent trust. Every movement etched into memory, every moment of survival and quiet heroism crystallized in the imprint of that blood mark. Back in the present, Eli's gaze lifted, meeting each operator's, a subtle fire kindling in the depth of his calm eyes. Captain Lucas Ford, standing a few paces away, shifted uncomfortably, sensing that something in this man's quiet composure was not to be underestimated. He pulled out his phone discreetly, ready to alert the higher chain of command, knowing that the old veteran before him carried a history that words alone could not convey. The operators, oblivious to the undercurrent of authority swelling around them, continued to circle, unaware that the balance of power had already shifted imperceptibly. Eli adjusted his grip on the knife, the small blood mark catching the light once more, a silent signal of a legacy that would soon demand acknowledgement, and the air seemed to hold its breath, thick with anticipation, as if the ground itself waited for the revelation that was about to unfold. The young operators hesitated for a moment, sensing a subtle shift in the atmosphere around Eli Bennett, though none of them could articulate exactly what had changed. The air seemed heavier, charged with an unspoken authority that settled over the concrete tarmac and the hum of the nearby vehicles. Eli adjusted his stance, the knife angled lightly in his hand, the faint blood mark catching the sunlight in a way that drew all eyes without a word being spoken. Team Falcon exchanged uneasy glances, the confident smirks beginning to fade, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty, the kind that only comes when someone realizes that they have misjudged a situation entirely. Captain Lucas Ford stepped closer, maintaining his composure but feeling the weight of history pressing through the veteran's stillness. His hand hovered near his pocket, where his phone rested, the device ready to call higher command, though he did not speak. The operators shifted, restless and aware of a tension they could not yet name, the rhythmic scrape of boots against concrete, now sounding unusually loud, echoing across the hangars as if the very ground were amplifying the silence. Eli's eyes scanned each of them, noting every subtle twitch, the slight hesitation in their posture, the nervous adjustments of gloves and sleeves, the small acts of discomfort that betrayed their certainty slipping. Without a word, he moved his knife in a deliberate arc, not in aggression but in a manner that carried a story, a weight that seemed to ripple outward, touching everyone present. Captain Ford's gaze dropped briefly to the mark on the blade, his mind connecting the faint red streak to stories whispered through decades, stories of loyalty, courage, and unwavering discipline. He felt the stirrings of awe, not for theatrics, but for the quiet mastery and history that radiated from Eli Bennett, the kind of mastery that no modern training could replicate. Team Falcon's leader, a young man named Riley Thompson, cleared his throat, a nervous gesture that betrayed the tension coiling in his chest. He tried to muster a tone of authority, asking Eli about the knife and its condition, but his voice sounded thin, uncertain, failing to carry over the silent weight that hung in the morning air. Eli lifted his gaze, pale blue eyes locking onto each operator, and for a heartbeat, the bustle of the compound faded, replaced by the vivid clarity of past moments. He was 25 again, kneeling in the shadow of a makeshift camp, guiding his team through precise, measured movements, every decision a calculation, every glance deliberate, the knife in his hand a tool of survival, a symbol of trust and commitment to those around him. The flashback receded as quickly as it had come, leaving only the quiet intensity in Eli's eyes, the operators frozen mid-step, understanding that they were in the presence of someone whose experience and discipline transcended their own training and youth. Captain Lucas Ford lowered his phone slightly, a silent acknowledgement that Eli's legacy was real, that the mark on the blade was a testament to deeds long past and unquestionable. The operators began to straighten, some swallowing, some shifting their weight nervously, the earlier confidence now tempered by respect that had been earned before a single word had been spoken. Eli's stance did not change, his calm, commanding presence filling the space between them, yet he did not raise his voice, he did not demand attention, and that was precisely what made the weight of his presence undeniable. The morning sun reflected off the tarmac, glinting faintly against the blade's mark, illuminating a story of resilience, skill, and unspoken authority, and Team Falcon understood, without discussion, that this was no ordinary encounter, and that any misjudgment could be a lesson learned silently and profoundly. The hum of distant engines, the low murmur of other personnel in the compound, all seemed to recede, leaving only the disciplined stillness of Eli Bennett, the quiet veteran whose knife, and the story it bore, had already spoken louder than any words could convey. Captain Lucas Ford's hand hovered over his pocket, the phone an unspoken bridge to authority, yet he held it back, watching the tension unfold. Eli Bennett remained motionless, the knife angled in his grip with a casual precision that belied the weight of history embedded in the small blood mark along its blade. Team Falcon shifted uneasily, each member acutely aware of the silence that now pressed down on them, heavier than any order or command they had ever encountered. The sun glinted across the tarmac, casting sharp shadows that seemed to stretch and twist around the operators, mirroring the unease tightening in their chest. Eli tilted the knife slightly, catching the light in a way that accentuated the faint stain, a subtle signal to anyone who could read it that spoke louder than words. Captain Ford's eyes narrowed as he recognized the weight carried in the veteran's presence, the unspoken authority that had accumulated over decades of quiet service, patience, and mastery. Memories flickered across Eli's expression, imperceptible to all but the most observant, recalling nights of planning, careful calculations, and the meticulous precision that had saved lives and upheld the highest standards long before any of the young operators had walked a military compound. He felt the rhythm of his own heartbeat, steady and measured, in contrast to the nervous energy spiraling around the younger men, the subtle fidgeting, the way they adjusted gloves and equipment as if to remind themselves of control they no longer possessed. Eli shifted his stance slightly, a movement almost ceremonial, bringing the knife to a gentle arc, drawing attention, not to any threat, but to the story etched into its surface, the history written in quiet deeds rather than announcements or medals. Captain Ford took a subtle step forward, his gaze fixed on the faint blood mark, understanding that this small, almost insignificant detail was a signal, a key to unlocking the legacy of a man whose reputation was forged not in noise, but in precision, discipline, and unwavering dedication. The operators, sensing the imperceptible shift in command, began to freeze mid-step, their bravado draining as the reality of their underestimation set in. Eli's eyes scanned the group, noting every reaction, every blink and hesitation, the slightest sign of comprehension flickering in the corner of an eye, and he allowed the briefest pause, letting the tension swell and settle teaching a lesson without a single raised voice. The ambient sounds of the compound faded, the hum of distant engines and the soft clatter of tools becoming a distant backdrop, leaving only the measured calm of the veteran's presence, which filled the space and drew the attention of everyone within it. Captain Ford's grip on the phone relaxed slightly, the understanding dawning that intervention might not yet be necessary, that the silent authority Eli radiated carried its own weight sufficient to command attention and respect. Team Falcon remained frozen, eyes locked on the subtle movements, the minute shifts in stance, and the faint blood mark that now glimmered with a significance far beyond its size. Eli's breathing was controlled, deliberate, matching the cadence of decades of experience, the patience that had been cultivated through countless drills, missions, and long hours where preparation outweighed reaction, observation outweighed impulse. The sunlight flickered across the knife, the faint mark catching and refracting, a testament to the past, a silent story told through the veteran's calm demeanor. The young operators realizing with growing unease that they were in the presence of someone whose competence and history eclipsed their own, and the morning seemed to hold its breath, suspended in the quiet acknowledgement that authority and mastery do not need proclamation to be undeniable. The distant sound of a helicopter rotor spun softly in the background, a gentle thrum that barely disturbed the tense stillness on the tarmac. Eli Bennett adjusted his grip on the knife, the worn leather hilt pressing into his calloused palm, the faint blood mark catching the morning light and drawing attention without a word. Team Falcon remained rooted in place, their earlier swagger replaced by measured caution, subtle movements betraying their awareness of being observed by someone far beyond their current understanding. Captain Lucas Ford stepped a fraction closer, the weight of responsibility in his eyes, watching the operator struggle to maintain composure in the face of unspoken authority. Eli's gaze swept across the young man, noting each twitch, each slight shift of weight, and he allowed the silence to stretch, the moment expanding as if time itself had paused to observe. The faint scent of oil and sun-baked concrete mingled with the morning air, a mundane backdrop to the extraordinary presence that radiated from Eli, filling the space with an invisible gravity. He moved the knife deliberately, the subtle angle revealing the faint mark once more, a signal of past deeds and a life lived with unwavering discipline, each line and curve of the blade carrying a story of skill, patience, and quiet mastery. The operator's eyes followed the motion, their attention captivated despite themselves, the initial mockery fading into uncertainty as the full weight of Eli's experience became apparent. Captain Ford felt a shift in his own perception, recognizing that the story etched in the knife, the mark of blood, was a testament to decades of service, precise judgment, and unspoken leadership that demanded acknowledgement. A soft breeze stirred across the compound, rustling the edges of nearby training equipment, yet the sound seemed to be absorbed into the gravity of the moment, leaving only the steady presence of Eli and the operators frozen in reluctant attention. He breathed in slowly, methodically, each inhalation measured, echoing a rhythm built over a lifetime of careful observation and decisive action, a rhythm that contrasted sharply with the restless, anxious movements of the younger men around him. Captain Ford's thumb brushed against the phone in his pocket, the option to call higher command present but unnecessary, as he realized the silent authority emanating from Eli had already established control over the situation. Team Falcon shifted again, small adjustments and swallowed breaths betraying the tension that now filled the space, the early confidence replaced by the dawning comprehension that they were in the presence of a veteran whose mastery, knowledge, and quiet command eclipsed their own training. The morning light glinted off the blade, the subtle red mark drawing every gaze, carrying a significance that transcended explanation, a story that demanded recognition without proclamation. Eli's stance remained calm and unyielding, the knife a symbol, a conduit of history and experience, a silent assertion of skill and authority. The hum of activity in the compound seemed to fade further, leaving a focused, almost reverent space, where every observer, from the operators to Captain Ford, understood the magnitude of the veteran's presence and the unspoken lesson being imparted without a single raised voice or hurried word. The subtle tension lingered, thickening the morning air, as Eli Bennett held the knife with an unhurried precision that drew every eye without a single word. Team Falcon remained motionless, the nervous energy in their bodies palpable, yet contained, as if the compound itself had pressed a pause on ordinary motion. Captain Lucas Ford watched carefully, noting the shift from bravado to caution among the operators, the way their hands hovered near equipment as though unsure what to do next. Eli tilted the blade, the sunlight glancing across the faint blood mark, illuminating it in a way that seemed almost deliberate, as though drawing a line between past deeds and present recognition. The memory stirred again in his mind, a careful recall of missions undertaken decades earlier, nights spent planning with a meticulous eye, every choice measured, every detail attended to with quiet exactness, the knife a trusted extension of skill and knowledge. Captain Ford sensed the import of the moment, recognizing that authority here was not asserted through words or commands, but through presence, experience, and the subtle weight of history embodied in the veteran standing before them. The operators shifted slightly, unease spreading in tiny increments, a foot sliding back, a hand adjusting a strap, a breath taken with more awareness than before. Eli's gaze did not waver, scanning the young men in measured observation, noting each micro-expression, each hint of apprehension, the almost imperceptible recognition that their assumptions had been premature. The ambient sounds of the compound faded into background static, the distant hum of engines and the rustle of flags on poles becoming a quiet accompaniment to the commanding stillness that emanated from Eli. He moved the knife in a controlled, almost ceremonial arc, demonstrating familiarity and mastery, without any motion suggesting threat, the subtle angle revealing the blood mark to its fullest significance, a silent narrative that spoke of loyalty, trust, and unwavering competence. Captain Ford's thumb hovered over his phone, the potential call to higher authority present but unnecessary, as he realized that Eli's measured presence conveyed more command than any order could. Team Falcon's nervous adjustments continued, small but telling gestures of shifting weight and involuntary glances, signaling that they had begun to comprehend the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Eli exhaled slowly, the rhythm steady, his posture calm and unwavering, embodying decades of training, service, and quiet discipline, the knife as much a symbol of past achievements as a tool in the present moment. The morning sun intensified the glint on the faint blood mark, drawing attention from every observer. Yet Eli's composure remained unshaken, his authority silent yet absolute, commanding respect without uttering a single command. The operators and Captain Ford alike were held in the gravity of that stillness, the understanding dawning that mastery and history could exert influence far beyond age or size, and that the smallest details, a mark, a gesture, a measured stance, could communicate far more than words ever could. The compound seemed to exhale slowly around them, the tension easing into a focused quiet, leaving only Eli Bennett, the veteran, standing as a measured, silent testament to experience, discipline, and the weight of unspoken authority, every observer caught in the subtle but undeniable gravity he exuded, the knife and its marks serving as a bridge between the past and the present. A quiet lesson in respect and recognition that required no amplification beyond its own presence. The compound seemed suspended in a moment of collective awareness, each breath and shuffle of Team Falcon echoing faintly across the open expanse of concrete and sun-warmed metal. Eli Bennett shifted slightly, the knife resting naturally in his hand, the subtle blood mark catching the light in a way that drew attention without a word, an unspoken testament to a lifetime of precision and quiet achievement. Captain Lucas Ford observed the operators, noting the subtle exchange of glances, the way they measured their movements with newfound caution, aware that the man before them commanded respect not by volume or aggression, but by an undeniable presence shaped by decades of experience. Eli's eyes scanned the group, each operator frozen in a micro-expression of recognition, the faintest hint of admiration mingled with uncertainty in their features, a silent acknowledgement that the assumptions they had brought to the encounter were incomplete. A soft breeze stirred across the compound, rustling the edges of equipment and flags. yet it carried no distraction, only heightening the awareness of the subtle authority that radiated from Eli. Memories flickered across his expression, imperceptible to all but the most attentive, recalling long hours of planning and observation, the careful consideration that had guided every decision, the quiet lessons taught through action rather than instruction, every detail etched into muscle memory and instinct. The operators shifted subtly, small gestures of adjustment and hesitation, each movement betraying their growing comprehension of the depth and significance embodied in Eli Bennett, a man whose calm and measured control held sway over the environment without the need for overt command. Captain Ford's hand rested lightly on his phone, awareness of the chain of command present but unnecessary, as the quiet authority of the veteran conveyed sufficiency in command through posture, presence, and the subtle signal of the knife's mark. The morning sun glinted across the blade, the faint red mark drawing the eyes of all, a reminder of careful service, precision, and the weight of history carried without fanfare or proclamation. Eli exhaled slowly, rhythm measured, the calm in his posture, and gaze a counterpoint to the tension still visible in the operators, reinforcing a lesson of silent mastery and quiet dignity that required no articulation beyond the scene unfolding. The distant hum of engines and the muted clatter of tools faded into insignificance, leaving only the stillness and focus surrounding Eli Bennett, the knife, and the mark, every observer cognizant of the unspoken narrative unfolding, the subtle lesson of respect and recognition conveyed through decades of experience, embodied in a moment of quiet authority that resonated more powerfully than any command or directive could. The quiet tension stretched further as a low, steady hum of distant engines filled the background, blending with the faint rustle of flags atop the hangars. Yet no sound could pierce the concentration that had settled over the compound. Eli Bennett held the knife lightly, almost casually, the blood mark glinting with a significance that went unnoticed by some, but commanded the attention of anyone attuned to history and experience. Team Falcon remained frozen, each operator caught in a moment of realization, their youthful certainty eroding under the weight of a presence that demanded respect without a single raised voice. Captain Lucas Ford stepped slightly forward, eyes narrowing as he absorbed the subtle cues, the straightened posture, the steady gaze, the controlled breathing, and the deliberate precision in every small movement that Eli exhibited. Memories flickered across Eli's expression, imperceptible yet profound, as the compound faded into the background and the vivid recollection of past missions surfaced, meticulously planned operations, careful coordination, and the quiet execution of skill honed over decades. The knife in his hand was more than a tool. It was a symbol, a tangible link to a history that held weight far beyond the surface, its faint mark a testament to discipline, observation, and unspoken leadership. The operators shifted, small, involuntary gestures betraying a mix of awe and uncertainty, the realization dawning that they were in the presence of someone whose authority had been earned in ways they could not replicate or challenge. Eli's gaze swept across them again, calm and unwavering, noting the subtle recognition spreading in their expressions, the tentative acknowledgement of his mastery and the silent history he carried. Captain Ford lowered his hand from his pocket, understanding that intervention was unnecessary, that the presence of the veteran conveyed control and respect more effectively than any call to authority could. The sunlight caught the blade once more, the blood mark reflecting with a quiet brilliance, signaling deeds performed long ago, lessons learned in moments that had defined character and competence, resonating now in the stillness of the present. The hum of distant machinery and muted conversation faded into insignificance, leaving only the veteran's measured calm and the operator's slowly dawning comprehension of the scope of experience before them. Every small movement, every controlled exhalation from Eli spoke of a life defined by preparation, precision, and a quiet, enduring authority that did not require words to command recognition. Team Falcon's collective posture subtly shifted, each member absorbing the lesson of patience, respect, and understated mastery, the initial tension giving way to an almost reverent stillness. Eli Bennett remained the anchor of the scene, the knife a silent testament to the history and competence that surrounded him, the faint mark catching the eye as a signal of unspoken achievement, the compound itself seeming to acknowledge the authority embedded in the veteran's presence. Captain Ford's gaze lingered, appreciating the weight of the moment, the quiet lesson in respect and acknowledgement unfolding naturally as every observer grasped, without discussion, that mastery and experience communicated more effectively through presence than through proclamation. The operators stood in measured silence, the scene suspended in the morning light, each person cognizant of the quiet but undeniable authority radiating from Eli Bennett, the knife, and the story it carried. And in that shared stillness, the subtle acknowledgement of a veteran's enduring legacy was complete. The morning light shifted across the compound, casting long, sharp shadows from the nearby hangars, highlighting the small details that had gone unnoticed in the previous tension. Eli Bennett held the knife with effortless composure, his grip firm but unassuming, the faint blood mark reflecting a subtle glint that drew attention and whispered of the history embedded in its surface. Team Falcon remained motionless, the initial brashness and overconfidence replaced by a growing respect and a careful awareness that each movement, each glance could be observed and understood. Captain Lucas Ford's eyes flicked between the operators and the veteran, reading the nuanced reactions, the almost imperceptible recognition forming on the faces of the young men as the weight of the moment settled into their consciousness. Eli's gaze swept across them deliberately, each operator frozen, every expression and small gesture noted with precision, and he allowed the quiet to expand, letting the significance of his presence and the knife's mark communicate in a language that required no words. The faint hum of distant engines and the soft rustle of flags on their poles seemed to fade, leaving only the concentrated stillness that carried the story of a lifetime of discipline, skill, and measured authority. Memories flickered subtly across Eli's eyes, imperceptible yet powerful, recalling the countless decisions made in the past, the calculated movements, and the attention to detail that had ensured success and reliability, every lesson and act of mastery now distilled into the calm that radiated from him. Team Falcon's posture reflected the dawning comprehension, their previous attempts at confidence, tempered by the invisible authority that emanated from a man who had long learned to command respect through presence rather than words. Captain Ford felt the shift, the understanding that intervention or reinforcement of authority was unnecessary, for the silent command and demonstration of expertise provided a lesson that no spoken order could convey. The blade in Eli's hand caught another glint of sunlight, the blood mark prominent yet understated, a quiet emblem of past service and unspoken accomplishment, resonating through the space with an authority that grounded the observers in recognition and respect. Every subtle movement, every measured breath, every controlled adjustment of the knife or stance spoke to the experience and calm of a veteran whose skill was beyond the understanding of those who had yet to accumulate such history. The operators remained absorbed, the unspoken acknowledgement of mastery and competence apparent in every hesitant motion and tentative glance, the compound itself seeming to hold its breath in the presence of quiet, absolute authority. Eli's eyes moved from one observer to another, noting the subtle indications of comprehension and the formation of respect, his presence alone conveying a narrative of accomplishment, discipline, and unwavering competence. The sun climbed higher, casting a brighter light across the tarmac, and the quiet focus remained, the veteran standing resolute, the knife in hand, its blood mark a bridge between past and present, every person present silently learning that true mastery and authority often speak loudest when words remain unnecessary and the stillness alone commands attention. The morning had fully settled over the compound, the harsh brightness softened by a light haze that lent the scene a tranquil quality. Eli Bennett lowered the knife slowly, the faint blood mark still visible but no longer demanding attention, its significance now quietly understood by everyone present. Team Falcon began to relax, their postures loosening as the weight of tension gave way to measured respect, the young operators exchanging glances that reflected a dawning comprehension of the depth of experience standing before them. Captain Lucas Ford took a deliberate step back, releasing the unspoken vigilance he had maintained, and allowed the veteran space, observing with an appreciation that went beyond protocol or duty. Eli's eyes swept the group one last time, noting the subtle shift in their expressions, the acknowledgement in their movements, the quiet recognition that mastery and authority often need no voice to be understood. The breeze moved across the compound, carrying with it the faint scent of sun-warmed metal and concrete, a soft background to the lingering stillness that seemed to hold the lessons of the morning. The operators adjusted their stances, careful to honor the presence of Eli Bennett, whose calm and measured demeanor conveyed decades of accumulated knowledge, discipline, and quiet leadership. Captain Ford exhaled slowly, sensing that the moment had reached its natural conclusion, the gravity of the veteran's experience resonating through every observer without a single word being spoken. Eli lowered the knife fully now, placing it gently in a sheath, the motion deliberate, unhurried, carrying the weight of years of precision and careful practice. The faint mark on the blade, a testament to past deeds, now rested quietly as a silent emblem of achievement, the operators understanding without discussion that they had witnessed a demonstration of authority rooted in skill, history, and unwavering composure. A subtle nod from Eli acknowledged Captain Ford, a gesture of recognition for understanding the lesson imparted, and the young officers and operators mirrored it, each in their own way internalizing the experience. The morning light shifted again, the warmth of the sun illuminating the tarmac, the shadows stretching and softening, echoing the peaceful closure settling over the compound. Eli's calm presence remained, steady and assured, a reminder that true authority and mastery are measured not by noise or display, but by the quiet assurance of competence and the respect it commands naturally. Team Falcon began to move again, their actions careful, deliberate, carrying with them the imprint of what they had just observed, a lesson in humility, observation, and the understated power of experience. Captain Ford lingered for a moment, allowing the young operators to regain their composure, the compound now filled with a quiet reverence that lingered longer than the morning itself. Eli Bennett turned slowly, walking back toward the shade of the hangars, his movements unhurried, each step deliberate, embodying the serene authority of a veteran whose legacy spoke louder in silence than any command ever could. The tarmac, the knife, the faint mark, and the young operators now all shared a moment suspended in understanding, the gravity of experience and quiet mastery leaving an indelible impression, and the compound exhaled, leaving only a sense of calm respect and the enduring presence of a man who had earned it through a lifetime of measured action, quiet vigilance, and unwavering dignity.